Tonight, Elena Vale will sell herself to save her father. Not for money, not for power, for his heartbeat. The man across from her doesn't blink as she signs the contract that makes her his wife. Damien Corsetti, the name criminals whisper before they disappear. He built an empire on fear, and now she belongs to it. The ring is cold when he slides it on. His voice is colder. You'll live in my house, sleep in my bed, and you will not ask questions. She looks up at the most dangerous man in the city and realizes she just married a ghost who breathes. This is their story. Follow it to the end. Like this video and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hit the hospital windows like fists. Elena pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the city drown below. Somewhere out there, people were going home. Families were sitting down to dinner. Lives were continuing in all the ordinary ways hers had stopped 3 days ago. Behind her, machines beeped steadily. Her father's breathing was thin and mechanical. Miss Vale? She turned. Dr. Richardson stood in the doorway, his face arranged in that careful expression doctors practiced, the one that meant the news was bad, and the bill was worse. How much longer does he have? Elena asked. She was done with soft words and false hope. The doctor's shoulders dropped slightly. Without the surgery, days, maybe a week. And with it, he'd need to be transferred to a specialized cardiac center. The procedure itself is experimental, but it's his only chance. Richardson paused. The cost, how much? $400,000, minimum. That's not including recovery, medication, aftercare. Elena laughed, and it came out broken. I have $6,000 in my savings account, and a degree that's worth less than the paper it's printed on. She'd already called every bank, every loan officer, every distant relative who might remember her father's name. The answer was always the same. Not enough credit, not enough collateral, not enough time. I'm sorry, Richardson said, and he actually meant it. If there's any family, any resources, there's nothing. Elena looked back at her father. Tubes ran from his arms. His face was gray. Thank you, doctor. When he left, she pulled a chair close to the bed and took her father's hand. It felt like paper. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Dad, I don't know how to fix this. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Elena Vale? The voice was male, smooth, and entirely too certain of itself. Who is this? Someone who can help your father. Her blood went cold. How do you know about St. Catherine's Hospital, room 447, acute heart failure, $400,000 surgery he can't afford? The man paused. Your father worked for the Corsetti family 20 years ago. Did you know that? Elena's throat closed. No. Accounting, clean books mostly. He got out before things turned ugly. Another pause. Mr. Corsetti remembers loyal men. He'd like to help. Why? The word came out sharp. He has his reasons. Are you interested or not? Every instinct screamed no. Everyone knew the Corsetti name. You didn't accept favors from people like that. Favors became debts, and debts became chains. But her father was dying. What does he want? Elena asked. A meeting. Tonight. I'll send a car. I didn't say yes. You will. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up to the hospital entrance. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask her name, just opened the door and waited. Elena got in because she was out of choices. The Corsetti building rose above the city like a blade, all glass and steel and money, the kind of place Elena had only seen from the outside. Security waved the car through without questions. The elevator required a fingerprint scan. They went up and kept going until her ears popped. The penthouse level. The doors opened onto a space that didn't feel real. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the storm battering the city, furniture that cost more than her year's rent, art on the walls that belonged in museums, and standing with his back to her, looking out at the rain, was Damien Corsetti. She'd seen his picture. Everyone had. But photographs didn't prepare you for the reality of him. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly still. He wore a suit like armor. His dark hair was pushed back, and when he turned, his eyes went through her. Not brown, not quite black. Something in between that reflected nothing. Miss Vale. His voice matched his eyes. Controlled. Cold. Sit. It wasn't a request. Elena sat on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than the surgery. Her hands were shaking, so she pressed them flat against her knees. Damien didn't sit. He stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in one hand, watching her like she was a problem he was deciding how to solve. "Your father is dying," he said. "Yes." "You have no way to pay for his treatment." "No." "And you came here because you're desperate." He took a sip of whiskey. Desperate people make poor decisions. Elena's jaw tightened. "If you're going to help, help. If not, stop wasting my time." Something flickered in his expression. Not quite a smile. More like recognition. "I'll pay for the surgery," Damien said. "The recovery. All of it. I'll also clear your father's debts and make sure he has care for the rest of his life." The relief was so sudden it made her dizzy. Then the fear came. "What do you want?" "You." The word landed like a slap. Damien set down his glass and walked toward her. Slowly. Each step deliberate. He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I need a wife," he said. Elena's laugh was involuntary and slightly hysterical. "You're joking." "I don't joke." He pulled a folder from inside his jacket and dropped it on the table beside her. "My world is changing. Old alliances are shifting. Enemies are looking for weaknesses. A wife projects stability, legitimacy. It makes me look human." "You want me to pretend? I want you to sign a contract." Damien's voice didn't rise, but it filled the room. "We marry. You live here. Play the role when necessary. In exchange, your father gets everything he needs." Elena opened the folder with shaking hands. Pages of legal text, terms, conditions. A section labeled Duration Indefinite. "This is insane," she whispered. "It's business." "Marriage isn't business. Everything is business, Miss Vale." Damien crouched so they were eye level, and suddenly there was nowhere to look but at him. "You came here because you have nothing left to bargain with except yourself. I'm offering you a transaction, your presence for his life. It's more than fair. And if I say no, then you leave. Your father dies, and you spend the rest of your life wondering if your pride was worth it." Bastard. He was a complete bastard, but he was right. Elena looked at the contract, at the man who'd written it, at the city outside that didn't care whether she lived or died. "How long?" she asked. "As long as I need you." "What exactly would you expect?" "You'll live here. Attend events with me when required. Act the part of a devoted wife in public. What happens in private is irrelevant as long as appearances are maintained. Separate bedrooms? If you prefer." Elena's hands were still shaking, but her voice came out steady. "I want to see my father, whenever I want. No restrictions." "Done. And when this ends, whatever this is, I walk away free. No strings, no debts." Damien's expression didn't change. "Agreed." She picked up the pen before she could think about it too much, before sanity could catch up. "One more thing," Damien said. "Once you sign, you're mine, in every way that matters to the outside world. That means you don't run. You don't embarrass me. You don't make me regret this choice." He leaned closer. "Are we clear?" Elena met his eyes and didn't blink. "Crystal." She signed her name across the bottom of the contract. Damien took the papers, glanced at her signature, and straightened. "Welcome to the family, Miss Vale." "It's Mrs. Corsetti now," Elena said flatly. His mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. "So it is, bossy." The wedding happened 48 hours later in a courthouse that smelled like disinfectant and old wood. No guests, no flowers, no music, just Elena in a dress she'd bought on sale, Damien in another perfect suit, and a bored judge who'd clearly performed this ceremony 1,000 times. "Do you take this woman?" "I do." "Do you take this man?" Elena's voice caught. Then, "I do. By the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife." No one mentioned a kiss. Damien signed the marriage certificate with the same cold efficiency he'd used on the contract. Elena's hand trembled when she added her name beside his. Mrs. Elena Corsetti. It looked wrong, like someone else's life. Outside, the same black sedan was waiting. Damien opened the door for her, the only gesture that resembled courtesy, and she slid inside. They didn't speak during the drive back to the penthouse. Elena stared out the window and thought about her father, who'd been transferred that morning to the best cardiac center on the East Coast. She'd gotten a text from Dr. Richardson. Surgery scheduled, prognosis good. Whatever you did, it worked. Whatever she did, she sold herself to the devil. The penthouse felt different now, colder, like she'd signed away her right to warmth when she signed that contract. Your things are in the east bedroom, Damien said, shrugging off his jacket. Beneath it, his shirt was tailored perfectly, but she caught the edge of something dark against his ribs. A bruise, maybe. Or worse. The east bedroom, Elena repeated. Third door on the left. You'll find everything you need. And you? West wing. We won't be in each other's way. Of course not. That would require him to acknowledge she was human. Elena found her bedroom, if you could call it that. It was bigger than her old apartment. King bed, sitting area. A bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. Her meager possessions looked pathetic scattered across the dresser. Someone had hung dresses in the closet. Designer labels, her size. She didn't want to know how he'd known. That night, Elena lay in the enormous bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the penthouse, her husband Christ, was doing the same. She didn't sleep. The first week was silence. Damien left early, came home late. Sometimes she heard him moving through the penthouse in the middle of the night, but she never saw him. Meals appeared in the kitchen like magic. A housekeeper came twice a week and didn't make eye contact. Security rotated in shifts outside the elevator. Elena was a ghost in a glass tower. She visited her father every day. He was recovering faster than the doctors expected, color returning to his face, strength to his voice. You look tired, sweetheart, he said one afternoon, squeezing her hand. I'm fine, Dad. You're lying, but he smiled. Whatever you're doing, thank you. I know it wasn't easy. If he only knew. On the 8th day, Damien finally spoke to her. She was in the kitchen, making coffee, when he walked in, still in last night's clothes, blood on his shirt cuff. Elena's hand froze halfway to the mug. You're hurt, she said. It's not mine. He poured himself coffee, black, and leaned against the counter. His eyes were bloodshot. There's an event tomorrow night, charity gala. You'll attend with me. Okay. Wear something appropriate. The stylist will come at 4. I don't need a stylist. You do. Damien's voice was flat. These people are vultures. They'll notice everything. Your dress, your jewelry, how you stand, how you smile. You'll be judged before you open your mouth. And what am I supposed to do? Stand there and look pretty? Essentially, he drained his coffee. Stay close to me. Don't wander. Don't answer questions without thinking. And don't trust anyone. Elena set down her mug harder than necessary. You make it sound like a war zone. It is. Damien looked at her then, really looked, and something in his expression shifted, softened. Just for a second. These aren't good people, Elena. They'll smile at you and plot your destruction in the same breath. Just be careful. It was the first time he'd used her name. Before she could respond, he was gone. The stylist arrived with an entourage and enough clothing to fill a boutique. They dressed Elena like a doll. Makeup, hair, a gown that cost more than her father's first surgery and fit like it had been designed specifically for her body. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. The woman staring back was elegant, polished, the kind of woman who belonged on Damien Corsetti's arm. She looked like a lie. Damien was waiting in the foyer when she emerged. He'd changed into a tuxedo, and the effect was devastating. He looked like old money and new violence wrapped together. His eyes traveled over her slowly. You'll do. High praise, Elena muttered. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Let's go. The gala was held in a mansion that made the Corsetti penthouse look modest. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers. Champagne that probably cost more per glass than Elena used to make in a day. And people. So many people. They moved through the crowd like sharks in tailored clothing, all perfect smiles and dead eyes. Damien's hand settled on the small of Elena's back, possessive, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. "Smile," he murmured against her ear. "You're madly in love with me, remember? I'm a terrible actress. Try harder." They were immediately swarmed. "Damien, darling, it's been too long. Mr. Corsetti, I didn't know you'd married. And who is this lovely creature?" Elena plastered on a smile and let Damien navigate. He introduced her as his wife with the same casual authority he used for everything else. His hand never left her back. She met a dozen people whose names she forgot immediately. Everyone wanted something from Damien: business deals, favors, access. And they looked at her like she was a curiosity, the girl who'd somehow caught the uncatchable man. If they only knew the truth. "You're doing well," Damien said quietly during a brief moment alone. "Better than I expected." Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's an observation. A man approached then, older, silver-haired, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Damien, I heard rumors of a wedding, but I didn't believe them." "Marcus," Damien's voice cooled several degrees. "Still buying politicians? Still breaking legs?" Marcus's gaze slid to Elena. "And this must be the blushing bride. Tell me, my dear, how does one tame a monster?" Elena felt Damien tense beside her. "You don't," she said smoothly. "You just decide whether you're brave enough to stand next to one." Marcus blinked, then laughed. "Well, she's got a spine. That's more than I expected." "Careful, Marcus," Damien said softly. That sounded dangerously close to an insult. "Merely an observation." But Marcus stepped back slightly. "Enjoy your evening, Mrs. Corsetti." When he left, Damien's hand tightened on Elena's waist. "You didn't have to do that." "Do what?" "Defend me. I wasn't defending you. I was defending myself." She glanced up at him. "He called you a monster." "I am a monster." "Maybe, but you're my monster now, at least on paper." Elena took a sip of champagne. "Besides, I don't let anyone talk down to me. Not anymore." Damien looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "No," he said quietly. "I don't suppose you do." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More people, more false smiles, more performances. But Damien stayed close, and every time someone's eyes lingered too long or their questions got too personal, his hand tightened on her back, protecting her. Or his investment. Elena couldn't tell which. They were leaving when it happened. A man stepped into their path. Young, well-dressed, drunk enough to be stupid. "Corsetti," he slurred. "Heard you got married. Didn't know you bought your women these days." The temperature dropped. Damien didn't move, but something in his stillness was more frightening than any threat. "Walk away, Roberts." "What's the matter? Can't take a joke?" Roberts swayed slightly. "Everyone knows this is just another business deal. Poor girl probably doesn't even know what she signed up for." Damien moved. One second, he was standing beside Elena. The next, he had Roberts by the throat, slammed against the wall, feet dangling. "Say one more word about my wife," Damien said, voice like ice, "and I'll make sure you never say anything again." Roberts' face turned purple. Security appeared from nowhere, but Damien didn't let go. His eyes were black, empty. "Damien," Elena touched his arm. "He's not worth it." For a moment, she thought he wouldn't listen. Then, slowly, Damien released his grip. Roberts collapsed, gasping. "Get him out of here," Damien told security. Then to Roberts, "If I see you again, I won't be this forgiving." He took Elena's hand and led her out into the night. In the car, silence. Elena watched him from the corner of her eye. His jaw was clenched. His hands were fists. "You okay?" she asked. "I should be asking you that." "I've been called worse things." Damien turned to look at her. "That's not the point." "Then what is?" "You're my wife. No one disrespects you, ever." The words should have sounded possessive. Instead, they sounded like a promise. Back at the penthouse, Damien poured himself a drink and stood by the windows. Elena kicked off her heels and joined him, keeping a careful distance. "Thank you," she said. "For tonight, For defending me. I told you, you're mine. I'm not, though, not really. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass. This is all pretend. Is it? The question hung between them. Damien finished his drink and set the glass down. When he looked at her, something had changed in his expression. The armor had cracked. I've done terrible things, Elena. Things that would make you run if you knew the details. He stepped closer. But when that drunk bastard insulted you, I wanted to kill him. And I would have, if you hadn't stopped me. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know what you married. His voice dropped. I'm not a good man. I'm not even close. But I keep my promises. You're safe here, always. That's not pretend. Elena's heart was beating too fast. Damien, go to bed, Elena. He turned away. Before I do something we'll both regret. She should have left. Should have walked away. Instead, she said, what if I wouldn't regret it? Damien went very still. Then he looked at her over his shoulder, and the hunger in his eyes made her breath catch. You don't mean that. Don't tell me what I mean. Elena. Her name was a warning. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. She stepped closer, close enough to see the scar above his eyebrow, the shadows under his eyes, the barely controlled violence that lived just beneath his skin. I'm afraid of a lot of things, she whispered, but you're not one of them. For a long moment they stood there, close enough to touch, close enough to kiss. Then Damien stepped back. Go to bed, he said again. Rougher this time. Please. Elena went, but she felt his eyes on her all the way down the hall. 5. 3 days later, Damien came home bleeding. Elena heard the elevator, then stumbling footsteps. She found him in the entryway, one hand pressed to his side, blood seeping through his shirt. Jesus Christ. It's fine. His voice was strained. You're bleeding all over the marble. It's not fine. She grabbed his arm. Sit down. Now. To her surprise, he obeyed. She grabbed towels, warm water, the first aid kit she'd found in the bathroom. Her hands shook, but she kept moving. Take off your shirt, she ordered. Damien raised an eyebrow, demanding. Do it, or I'll cut it off. He smiled, actually smiled, and started unbuttoning. When the shirt came off, Elena sucked in a breath. The wound wasn't deep, but it was long, a knife slash across his ribs. And beneath it, his torso was a map of violence. Old scars, recent bruises, the history of every fight he'd survived. Who did this? She asked, cleaning the wound as gently as she could. Doesn't matter, he's dead. Damien, you should see the other guy. Actually, you shouldn't. There's not much left to see. Elena pressed the towel harder than necessary, and he hissed. Don't joke, she said. This isn't funny. No, Damien caught her wrist gently. But if I don't joke, I'll have to think about how good your hands feel, and that's a dangerous road. Their eyes met. Elena's pulse jumped. This is going to need stitches, she said. I've had worse. You've had worse medical care, you mean? She found surgical thread in the kit. This is going to hurt. I know. She stitched him up by the light of the foyer chandelier, and he didn't make a sound, just watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. When she finished, she sat back. Done. Try not to get stabbed again. I'll do my best. Damien stood, testing the stitches. You're good at this. I used to volunteer at a free clinic. Before... She gestured vaguely. Before this. Before me. Yeah. Damien picked up his ruined shirt, then looked at her. Really looked. I'm sorry. For what? For dragging you into this life. You deserve better than blood on marble floors at midnight. Elena stood too, suddenly angry. Stop apologizing for things you can't change. I made my choice. I signed the contract. This is my life now, so stop acting like I'm some victim who doesn't know what she's doing. You're not. I'm not a lot of things, Damien. I'm not naive. I'm not weak. And I'm not going to break just because your world is ugly. She crossed her arms. I've seen ugly before. This is just a different flavor. He stared at her. Then slowly, he smiled. A real smile this time. You're something else, you know that? So I've been told. Damien reached out and touched her cheek, just his fingertips. Gentle. Thank you, he said quietly. For this. For not running. Where would I go? Anywhere. Away from me. Elena leaned into his touch before she could stop herself. What if I don't want to? The air between them changed. Damien's thumb brushed her lower lip, and her breath hitched. Elena, he whispered, if you keep looking at me like that, like what? Like you want me to kiss you. Maybe I do. His eyes darkened. This complicates things. Things are already complicated. Fair point. Then he kissed her. Soft at first. Testing, like he was giving her a chance to pull away. Elena grabbed his shoulders and pulled him closer. The kiss deepened, turned hungry. Damien's hand slid into her hair, and she tasted blood and whiskey and something darker. His chest was warm under her palms, scarred and solid and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. This is a bad idea, he murmured. Probably. I'm not good for you, not your decision to make. He laughed softly. Stubborn. You married me, too late for complaints. Damien pulled back just enough to look at her. His expression was raw, vulnerable, everything he usually hid behind cold control. I didn't marry you just for the contract, he said. Elena's heart stopped. What? I've known who you were for months. Watched you at that clinic fighting for people who had nothing. Saw the way you carried yourself, like the world kept trying to break you, but you wouldn't bend. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. When your father got sick, I saw an opportunity. I'm not proud of that, but I'm not sorry either. You manipulated me. Yes. You used my father. Yes. Elena should have been furious, should have slapped him. Instead, she asked, why? Because I wanted you, Damien said simply, and I always get what I want. It should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like confession. You're insane, Elena whispered. Probably. He kissed her again, softer this time. Does that change anything? She thought about the contract, about the lie they were living, about the fact that this man had bought her like property. Then she thought about the way he'd defended her at the gala. The vulnerability in his eyes right now, the kiss that still burned on her lips. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what this is. Neither do I. Damien's hands framed her face. But I know I don't want you sleeping in the East Wing anymore. Elena's pulse jumped. Damien, I'm not asking you to sleep with me. I'm asking you to sleep next to me. His voice roughened. I'm tired of listening to you move around in there and not being able to touch you. I'm tired of pretending this is just business when you're the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I want to see before I sleep. The confession hung between them. Elena knew this was a line they couldn't uncross. Knew that if she said yes, everything would change. She said yes anyway. That night, Elena moved her things to the West Wing. Damien's bedroom was darker than hers, more masculine. The bed was massive, covered in black sheets that probably cost a fortune. I'll stay on my side, he promised. Okay. They lay in the darkness, carefully not touching. Elena stared at the ceiling and tried to calm her racing heart. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Do you regret this? The marriage? Silence. Then, no. Do you? I don't know yet. That's fair. She felt him shift. Elena? Yeah? Thank you for saying yes. To all of it. She rolled onto her side, facing him. In the darkness, she could just make out his profile. Ask me again in a month, she said. If I haven't killed you by then, maybe we'll make this work. His laugh was soft, genuine. Deal. They fell asleep like that. Not touching, but together. And for the first time since she'd signed the contract, Elena didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she might actually survive this, maybe even want to. The first morning, Elena woke to find Damien already gone. His side of the bed was cold, but there was a note on the pillow written in sharp, precise handwriting. Had to leave early. Coffee's ready. Don't wait up tonight. No signature, no affection, just information. She should have expected that. One night of confessions didn't erase years of walls. Elena showered, dressed, and found the coffee exactly where he'd said. The penthouse felt different in daylight, less like a prison, more like a space she was learning to navigate. She spent the morning reading, trying not to think about the fact that she'd slept next to a man who'd admitted to orchestrating her entire life. Her father called around noon, voice stronger than it had been in months. "The doctors say I can come home next week," he said, and she could hear the smile. "Can you believe it? They're calling it a miracle." "That's amazing, Dad." "I don't know how you managed this, sweetheart, but thank you. I know it couldn't have been easy. If you only knew. I'm just glad you're okay. Will you come by today? I want to see your face." "Of course. I'll be there this afternoon." After she hung up, Elena stood in the massive kitchen and felt the weight of everything settle on her shoulders. Her father thought she'd performed a miracle. In reality, she'd sold herself to a man who collected people like possessions. But when she closed her eyes, she could still feel Damien's hands in her hair, could still taste the desperation in his kiss. Nothing about this made sense. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Car will pick you up at 2 p.m. Security detail included. Don't argue." No name, but she knew who it was from. Elena typed back, "I can take a cab." The response came immediately. "No, you can't. Not anymore." She stared at the message, frustration rising. Then she typed, "I'm not a prisoner." This time, the reply took longer. "No. You're my wife. There's a difference." Elena threw her phone on the counter and resisted the urge to scream. At exactly 2 o'clock, the car arrived. The driver was different from before, younger, with a scar across his jaw and eyes that tracked every movement on the street. "Mrs. Corsetti," he said, opening the door. "I'm Marco. I'll be your primary driver from now on." "I didn't ask for a primary driver." "Mr. Corsetti insists." "Mr. Corsetti insists on a lot of things." Marco's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Yes, ma'am, he does." The drive to the hospital felt different with Marco at the wheel. He didn't try to make conversation, but there was something almost comforting about his presence, like having a very large, very dangerous dog watching your back. Her father looked better, color in his cheeks, clarity in his eyes. He hugged her tight enough to make her ribs ache. "Look at you," he said, pulling back to study her face. "You look different. Tired, maybe, but different." "I'm fine, Dad. You're lying again." He settled back against his pillows. "What's going on, Elena? And don't tell me nothing. I know my daughter." She almost told him, almost explained the whole twisted arrangement. But what good would it do? He was recovering. He was safe. The truth would only hurt him. "I got a job," she said instead. "Good pay. Long hours. That's all." Her father's eyes narrowed. "What kind of job?" "Personal assistant work for a businessman." "What's his name?" Elena's throat closed. "Does it matter?" "It does if he's working you this hard." Her father reached for her hand. "Sweetheart, you don't have to kill yourself for me. I'm going to be fine, whatever you're doing." "I want to do it," she interrupted. "Dad, please, just trust me." He searched her face, and she could see him weighing whether to push. Finally, he sighed. "Okay, but if you need help, if anything goes wrong, I'll tell you, I promise." Another lie to add to the collection. They talked for another hour about safe things, his therapy schedule, the nurses he liked, the terrible hospital food, normal things that felt like a different life. When she left, Marco was waiting exactly where she'd left him, leaning against the car and watching the parking lot like he expected an attack. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine. Can we go home?" Home. The word felt strange in her mouth. Marco opened the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Corsetti, the boss doesn't usually worry about people. The fact that he assigned me to you means something. It means he's possessive. Maybe. Or maybe it means he actually gives a damn." Marco closed the door before she could respond. Back at the penthouse, Elena found a dress hanging in the bedroom. Deep emerald green, designer label, her exact size. A note pinned to the hanger. "Dinner tonight, 8 p.m. Wear this." She crumpled the note and threw it across the room. Then, at 7:30, she put on the dress anyway. It fit perfectly. Because of course it did. Damien didn't do anything halfway. He came home at 7:45, still in his suit, but looser somehow. Tie undone, top button open. When he saw her, he stopped in the doorway. "You wore it," he said. "You left me a dress with a command. What was I supposed to do?" "Most people would tell me to go to hell." "I'm not most people." Damien crossed the room slowly, and Elena forced herself not to step back. He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. No, he agreed softly. You're not. His fingers brushed the fabric at her waist. You're angry. I'm annoyed. There's a difference. Tell me why. Because you order me around like I'm another employee. Because you make decisions without asking. Because you act like I should just accept all of this without question. Damien's hand settled on her hip, and she felt the heat of it through the thin silk. You're right. Elena blinked. What? You're right. I'm used to giving orders and having them followed. I'm not used to... He paused, searching for words. I'm not used to caring whether someone agrees with me or not. And you care now? I'm trying to. His thumb traced small circles against her waist. It's not natural for me. But I'm trying. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Elena looked up at him, at the shadows under his eyes and the tension in his jaw. Where are we going? She asked. Nowhere public. Just dinner. Here. I thought... Damien's expression shifted, almost uncertain. I thought we should actually talk. Like people who share a bed. Something in Elena's chest loosened. Okay. Okay? Yeah, let's talk. Dinner was set up on the terrace. Candles, wine, food that looked like art. The city spread out below them, all lights and noise and life. They sat across from each other, and for a moment, neither spoke. This is weird, Elena said finally. Extremely. We're married, but we barely know each other. I know you take your coffee black. You talk to your father every day. You read poetry when you think no one's watching. Damien poured wine for both of them. You bite your lip when you're nervous, and you have a scar on your left knee from falling off a bike when you were 7. Elena stared at him. How do you... I pay attention. That's creepy. Probably. He took a sip of wine. But I'm a creepy person, so it tracks. Despite everything, Elena laughed. You're also an asshole. Absolutely. Damien leaned back, studying her. Your turn. What do you know about me? You're controlling. You have nightmares. You play piano when you can't sleep. She paused. And you have a copy of Dante's Inferno in Italian on your nightstand, which means you either read Italian or you're pretentious. Both, actually. Of course. Elena took a drink. The wine was perfect. Everything about this was perfect, which made it feel even more surreal. Why did you really marry me, Damien? I told you the real reason, not the version where you make yourself sound like a calculating bastard. The truth. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that she thought he might not answer. I'm 34 years old, he said finally. I've built an empire that spans 3 states and terrifies people who've seen everything. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I can make people disappear with a phone call. He looked at her. And I'm completely alone. Elena's breath caught. Everyone around me wants something, Damien continued. Power, money, protection. They smile and bow and would sell me out the second it benefited them. I trust 3 people in this world, and one of them is my driver. And the other 2? Dead. The word landed heavy. Then I saw you at that clinic, Damien said. Working for free because you actually gave a damn. Fighting with administrators because they wanted to turn away a homeless kid. You threw a chart at someone's head, I believe. He deserved it. I'm sure he did. Damien's smile was fleeting. You were real, angry and stubborn, and so absolutely certain that the world should be better, even though it kept proving you wrong. I'd never seen anything like it. So you decided to trap me. I decided I wanted you in my life. And when your father got sick, I took the opportunity. Was it manipulative? Yes. Do I regret it? He met her eyes. Not even a little. Elena should have been furious, should have thrown her wine in his face and walked out. Instead, she asked, What happens when you get bored of me? That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Elena. Damien leaned forward, elbows on the table. I've been alive long enough to know the difference between temporary fascination and something that changes you. You changed me the moment you walked into that penthouse scared out of your mind but too proud to show it. Her heart was beating too fast. This doesn't make sense. Love rarely does. The word hung between them like a grenade. Don't, Elena whispered. Don't say that word. Why not? Because this isn't love. This is Stockholm Syndrome or convenience, or maybe it's the first honest thing either of us has felt in years. Damien stood and walked around the table. He crouched in front of her chair, hands on the armrests, caging her in. I know this is fucked up. I know I'm fucked up. But tell me you don't feel it too. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His face was inches from hers, and she could see every scar, every line, every imperfection that made him real. I don't know what I feel, she admitted. That's a start. He kissed her then, soft and devastating, and Elena gave up trying to make sense of anything. She kissed him back like drowning, like breathing, like maybe this broken thing between them could be enough. When they finally pulled apart, Damien rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, he murmured. Not because of the contract, not because of your father, just stay. Elena's hands found his face, rough with stubble, warm and solid. I'm still angry at you. I know. And I still don't trust you completely. I know that too. But I'm not going anywhere. His eyes closed and she felt him exhale against her skin. Relief, raw and unhidden. They ate dinner in silence after that, but it was different now, easier, like they'd crossed some invisible line and found firmer ground on the other side. Later, in bed, Elena lay in the darkness and listened to Damien breathe. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Those scars, the ones all over your body, how did you get them? She felt him tense. That's a long story. I have time. Silence. Then, my father was in the business, started small, grew it into something bigger. He had enemies. When I was 15, they came for him at our house. Elena turned to face him, though she could barely see his outline. What happened? They killed him in front of me. Would have killed me too, but I ran. Hid in the basement for 6 hours while they tore the house apart looking for me. His voice was flat, emotionless. When they finally left, I came out and found him in his office. That's where the big scar on my shoulder came from. Got clipped trying to drag him to safety before I realized he was already gone. Damien, I'm so sorry. Don't be. I learned everything I needed to know that night. Trust no one, show no weakness, and always, always be willing to go further than your enemy. He shifted. I found the men who did it. Took me 3 years. They died slowly. The casual way he said it should have terrified her. Instead, Elena reached for his hand in the darkness. You were just a kid, she said. I stopped being a kid the night they put a bullet in my father's head. That doesn't make it okay. What happened to you? Made me who I am. Made me strong enough to survive this world. His fingers tightened on hers. Made me into someone you should probably be afraid of. I told you before. You don't scare me. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Elena moved closer until she could feel his warmth. Thank you for telling me. You asked. Most people would lie. I don't want to lie to you anymore. Not about the things that matter. He pulled her against his chest, and she settled there like it was natural. Get some sleep, Elena. You too. I don't really sleep. Try anyway. She felt his chest rise and fall beneath her cheek, felt his heartbeat steady and strong. Okay, he murmured against her hair. For you, I'll try. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time Damien didn't have nightmares. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Damien left early for business Elena didn't ask about. She visited her father, read, explored the city with Marco as her ever-present shadow. Evenings, they had dinner together, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence. Nights, they shared a bed and the careful intimacy of two people learning how to exist in the same space. It almost felt normal. Then the cracks started showing. It began with phone calls Damien would take in another room, voice low and tense. Then late nights where he didn't come home at all, just sent a text. Business. Don't wait up. Elena tried not to worry, tried to remember this was always temporary, always conditional. But she'd gotten used to falling asleep next to him, got used to his weight on the mattress, the sound of his breathing, the way he'd unconsciously reach for her in the dark. When he was gone, the bed felt too big, One night she woke to find him standing by the windows at 3 in the morning, still fully dressed, blood on his knuckles. "Damien?" He didn't turn. "Go back to sleep." Elena got up and crossed to him. His jaw was clenched so tight she thought his teeth might crack. "Talk to me," she said. "There's nothing to talk about. You're covered in blood and standing in the dark. There's definitely something to talk about. It's handled." "What's handled?" Finally he looked at her, and his eyes were empty, cold, the way they'd been that first night in the penthouse. "Things you don't need to know about. Things that don't concern you." The words hit like a slap. "Right," Elena said quietly. "Because I'm just the wife on paper. Just the transaction." "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it?" She crossed her arms. "You tell me I matter, that this is real. Then you shut me out the second things get complicated. I'm protecting you. From what? Your life? Because newsflash, Damien, I'm already in it. I married you. I sleep in your bed. I wear your ring. You don't get to pick and choose when I'm really your wife and when I'm just decoration." His expression cracked. "Elena, no. You don't get to do this. You don't get to pull me close and push me away whenever it's convenient." Her voice shook. "Either I'm your partner or I'm not. Either you trust me or you don't, but you can't have it both ways." For a long moment he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he sank into the chair by the window and put his head in his hands. "There's a problem," he said finally. "In the organization. Someone's been moving money. Small amounts, but consistent. It's been going on for months." Elena sat on the ottoman in front of him. "You think someone's stealing from you?" "I know someone is. I just don't know who." He looked up, and she saw the exhaustion in every line of his face. "Could be anyone, someone I've worked with for years, someone I trust. And if I'm wrong, if I accuse the wrong person, it could fracture everything I've built. So what are you going to do? Find out who it is? Make an example?" His voice went flat. "You don't steal from me and live." "Damien." "This is my world, Elena. This is what I do. I can dress it up in expensive suits and charity galas, but underneath, it's blood and violence and people who would kill me in my sleep if they thought they could get away with it." He leaned forward. "So yes, I shut you out. Because the less you know, the safer you are. Or maybe," Elena said carefully, "the less I know, the less I can help." He blinked. "Help? I'm not stupid, Damien, and I'm not fragile. You're dealing with someone who's smart enough to steal from you without getting caught. Someone who knows your patterns." She reached for his bloody hand. "But they don't know me. I'm the new variable, the thing they haven't accounted for." Understanding flickered in his eyes. "What are you suggesting?" "Use me. Put me in rooms where they won't expect me to be paying attention. Let me observe. Let me listen." Elena squeezed his hand. "You want a partner? Let me be one." Damien studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. "You're either brilliant or insane. I keep telling you, probably both." He pulled her into his lap and she went willingly, settling against his chest. "This could be dangerous," he warned. "More dangerous than marrying a mafia boss?" "Fair point." His arms tightened around her. "If I do this, you follow my lead. You don't take risks. And if I tell you to run, you run. Deal." "I mean it, Elena. One hint of real danger and you're gone. I'll have Marco drive you to the other side of the country if I have to." "So dramatic. I've already lost too many people. I'm not losing you, too." The words were fierce, possessive, everything she should have hated. Instead, they made her feel safe. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll be careful." "You better be." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Because if anything happens to you, I'll burn this entire city to the ground." It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. The next evening, Damien took her to a meeting. Not a gala this time. A real meeting. In a restaurant basement where the exits were guarded and everyone carried weapons they didn't bother to hide. Elena wore a simple black dress and Damien's ring and tried not to look as terrified as she felt. "Stay close," he murmured as they descended the stairs. "Don't speak unless spoken to, and whatever you hear, don't react." "Got it." The room was full of men who looked like they'd killed people before breakfast. They went quiet when Damien entered, a ripple of silence and respect. Or fear. Probably both. "Gentlemen," Damien said, and even his greeting sounded like a threat. Let's begin. Elena sat in a chair against the wall while they talked numbers and territories and things she barely understood. But she watched, studied, noticed who avoided eye contact and who spoke too quickly and who seemed just a little too comfortable. One man in particular caught her attention, younger than the others, expensive watch, quick smile. He agreed with everything Damien said, laughed at his jokes, praised his decisions. Too much, too eager. When the meeting ended and they returned to the penthouse, Elena waited until they were alone. The one in the gray suit, she said, with the Rolex. Damien poured himself a drink. Vincent? Is that his name? He was trying too hard, like he was performing. Vincent's been with me for 5 years, saved my life twice. Then maybe I'm wrong. Elena kicked off her heels. But he's the only one who seemed nervous when you mentioned the financial discrepancies. Damien went very still. You noticed that? Everyone else was either bored or confused. He was sweating. Could be guilt. Could be fear of being blamed. Could be. Elena met his eyes. Or it could be exactly what it looks like. For a long moment, Damien stared at her. Then he smiled, slow and dangerous. You're good at this. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I'm impressed. He crossed to her, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her hard. You might have just saved me months of investigation. Might have. I could still be wrong. Only one way to find out. Damien pulled out his phone. I'm going to set a trap. If Vincent takes the bait, we'll know. And if he doesn't, then we keep looking, but either way, he cupped her face. Thank you. For paying attention. For giving a damn. You're my husband. Of course I give a damn. Something in his expression softened. Say that again. You're my husband. Not the transaction, not the arrangement. Your husband. Yeah, Elena said softly. Mine. He kissed her again, gentler this time, and she felt something settle in her chest, something that felt dangerously close to belonging. 3 days later, Damien came home with blood on his shoes and satisfaction in his eyes. It was Vincent, he said. Elena looked up from her book. You're sure? Completely. The trap worked. He took the bait, moved the money exactly where I expected. Damien's smile was cold. He won't be a problem anymore. She didn't ask what that meant, didn't want to know the details, but she saw the way his shoulders had loosened, the way the tension had drained from his face. Good, she said simply. Damien crossed to her, pulled her into his arms, and held on like she was the only solid thing in his world. I couldn't have done this without you, he murmured against her hair. Sure you could have. Just would have taken longer. Maybe. But I didn't have to do it alone. He pulled back to look at her. That's new for me. Get used to it. I'm trying. That night they made love for the first time, slow and careful and real, with all the walls finally down. And afterward, lying in the tangled sheets with Damien's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Elena realized something terrifying. She wasn't pretending anymore. Somewhere between the contract and the confessions, between the danger and the trust, she'd fallen in love with him, with the monster, the king, the man who'd bought her and somehow made her want to stay. Damien? She whispered. Yeah? I think I'm in trouble. His arms tightened around her. What kind of trouble? The kind where I'm starting to forget this was supposed to be temporary. She felt him smile against her hair. Good, because I never intended it to be. Elena closed her eyes and let herself believe it. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. She had no idea the real test was about to begin. The call came at 4 a.m. Elena woke to Damien already out of bed, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and dangerous. When? He asked. Then, how many know? A pause. Lock it down. Nobody moves until I get there. He hung up and started dressing in the dark. What's wrong? Elena sat up, sheets pooling around her waist. Nothing you need to worry about. His voice was clipped, distant. The warmth from hours earlier had vanished like it never existed. Damien, stay here. Don't leave the penthouse. Marco's outside if you need anything. He was halfway to the door before she found her voice. Don't do that, she said. Don't shut me out again. Damien stopped, hand on the doorframe. His shoulders were rigid. Someone leaked our location, he said without turning around. The safe house we used after the Vincent situation. Only a handful of people knew about it, and now it's compromised. Ice spread through Elena's chest. What does that mean? It means someone in my inner circle is working against me. Someone close enough to know details that could get us both killed. Finally, he looked at her, and his eyes were cold, empty. It means the threat isn't external anymore. It's already inside. Then let me help. No. The word was final. This is different. This is people I've known for years. People I've trusted with my life. If I'm wrong about any of them, if I make one mistake, it could start a war I'm not prepared to fight. Elena threw off the covers and crossed to him. So you're just going to handle it alone? Like always? That's what I do. It's also what makes you vulnerable. She grabbed his arm, forced him to face her. You can't trust anyone, so you trust no one, which means you're isolated, which makes you an easy target. I have security that might be compromised. Jesus, Damien, do you even hear yourself? Her voice rose. You told me you wanted a partner. You told me this was real. But the second things get dangerous, you're pushing me away again. Because I can't lose you. The words exploded out of him. I can't think straight when I'm worried about whether you're safe. I can't make the kind of decisions I need to make if I'm constantly looking over my shoulder wondering if someone's using you to get to me. Then teach me how to protect myself. Give me tools, information, something other than sitting here like a helpless princess in a tower. Damien's jaw clenched. You don't understand what you're asking. Try me. They stared at each other, and Elena watched him war with himself. Control versus trust, isolation versus partnership. Finally, he exhaled slowly. Get dressed, he said. Warm clothes. We're leaving the city. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't think to look. His expression softened slightly. Somewhere I can keep you safe while I figure out who's betraying me. 20 minutes later, they were in the car with Marco at the wheel and another vehicle following behind. Damien spent the entire drive on his phone, issuing orders in a voice that made grown men nervous. Elena watched the city disappear behind them and tried not to think about the fact that she'd just become a fugitive in her own life. They drove for hours, north out of the city, through suburbs and small towns until civilization thinned and trees took over. The sun was rising when they finally turned onto a private road that wound through dense forest. The house, if you could call it that, appeared through the trees like something out of a dream. Modern architecture, all glass and stone, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Isolated. Beautiful. Completely alone. What is this place? Elena asked as they pulled up. Mine. No one else knows about it except Marco. Damien opened her door. I bought it years ago under a shell corporation. Never told anyone. Never brought anyone here. Until now. Until now. Inside, the house was sparse but luxurious, minimal furniture, expensive finishes, floor-to-ceiling windows that showed nothing but water and sky. The second vehicle had followed them in. 3 men Elena didn't recognize got out, all carrying enough weapons to start a small war. Perimeter security, Damien explained. They'll make sure we're not followed. No one gets within a mile of this place without us knowing. How long are we staying? As long as it takes. He finally looked at her, really looked, and some of the coldness cracked. I know this isn't what you signed up for. Nothing about this marriage has been what I signed up for. Elena set down her bag. But I'm here, so what now? What now turned out to be a strange kind of limbo. Damien spent hours on encrypted calls, coordinating with people Elena never saw. The security team rotated shifts, silent and efficient. Marco brought supplies every other day and left without conversation. And Elena learned what it meant to exist outside the world. No social media, no regular phone service. No contact with her father beyond carefully worded messages sent through secure channels. Just her and Damien in a house that felt like the edge of everything. The first 2 days were tense. Damien was distracted, sharp-edged, his mind clearly elsewhere. They existed in the same space, but barely spoke. On the third night, Elena found him on the deck, staring out at the ocean with a glass of whiskey and an expression that could cut glass. You're going to wear a hole in the deck with all that brooding, she said. He didn't smile. I've narrowed it down to 3 people. 3 people I've known for years, worked beside, bled with, and one of them wants me dead. Elena took the whiskey from his hand and drank. It burned, going down. Tell me about them. Why? Because you need to talk, and I'm the only person here who isn't paid to listen. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then, slowly, he started talking. Marcus, his second in command. Been with him for a decade. Smart, ruthless, ambitious. Could run the organization in his sleep, but always claimed he didn't want the pressure. Gabriel, his financial advisor. Genius with numbers. Family man. 2 kids, wife he adored. Seemed content with his life, but had started asking questions about succession planning. And Thomas, his oldest friend. Knew him since they were teenagers. Saved Damien's life more than once. But recently distant, distracted, money problems he refused to discuss. Any one of them could do it, Damien said. All of them have the access, the knowledge. And I can't move against any of them without proof, because if I'm wrong, I lose someone I need. What does your gut say? My gut says all of them and none of them. He took back the whiskey and finished it. My gut says I'm paranoid and seeing threats where there aren't any. Or maybe your gut is telling you you're asking the wrong question. Damien looked at her. What do you mean? You're assuming one of them wants to take over. But what if it's not about power? Elena leaned against the railing. What if it's about something else? Money, revenge, fear. What if whoever's doing this isn't trying to replace you? They're trying to destroy you. His eyes narrowed. You think this is personal. Everything in your world seems personal. Damien was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, if it's personal, that changes the list. How many people have you hurt badly enough that they'd want revenge? Honestly, too many to count. But something had shifted in his expression. But only a few with the resources and patience to do this kind of damage. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling through contacts. Elena watched him work, saw the exact moment his face changed. What? She asked. Vincent. Damien's voice went cold. Vincent had a brother. The man who was stealing from you? He begged me for mercy, said his brother was sick, needed the money for treatment. I thought he was lying. I thought... Damien's hand tightened on the phone. What if he wasn't? Did you kill Vincent? No, I had him removed from the organization, made sure he'd never work in this city again. He met her eyes. But his brother might not see the distinction. So if the brother wanted revenge, he'd need inside help. Someone who knows your operation well enough to cause real damage. Someone like Marcus, Gabriel, or Thomas. Damien's expression was grim. Except none of them have any connection to Vincent's family. I checked backgrounds on everyone after the theft. But someone they know might. An assistant, a driver, Elena stopped. Marco. What about him? He has access to everything. He knows where we are right now. And you trust him completely, which means you probably never looked too closely at his history. Damien's face went very still. Then he made a call. I need a deep background check, he said. Every connection, every relationship, every person Marco's had contact with in the last 5 years. And I need it in an hour. The answer came back in 45 minutes. Marco's cousin had been engaged to Vincent's sister. The engagement ended when Vincent was expelled from the organization. The sister blamed Damien, blamed Marco too, for choosing loyalty over family. Son of a bitch, Damien breathed. He's been feeding them information this entire time, making me think I had a leak in the organization when it was the person I trusted most. Elena's blood ran cold. Damien, he's the only one who knows we're here. They looked at each other, and she saw the exact moment realization hit. Get upstairs, Damien ordered. Lock yourself in the bathroom. Don't come out until I tell you. I'm not leaving you. Elena, please. His voice cracked slightly. Please, just do what I'm asking. If something happens to me, there's a safe in the master bedroom. Code is your birthday. Everything you need to disappear is in there. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me. He grabbed her shoulders. Promise me if I tell you to run, you'll run. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him they'd face this together. Instead, she kissed him hard and said, I promise. She made it halfway up the stairs before the windows exploded. Glass shattered inward as gunfire erupted from the tree line. Elena hit the deck, arms over her head, as bullets tore through the beautiful glass walls like they were paper. Elena, move! Damien had a gun in his hand, Where had he been hiding that and was returning fire? Bathroom, now! She scrambled up the stairs on her hands and knees, ears ringing from the noise. Behind her, she heard more shots, shouting, the crash of furniture being overturned. The bathroom had no windows. She locked the door with shaking hands and pressed herself against the far wall, trying to hear what was happening below. More gunfire, men shouting. Something heavy hit the floor. Then silence. Horrible, suffocating silence. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She strained to hear anything, voices, footsteps, breathing. Nothing. "Damien?" she called out. Her voice sounded too loud. "Damien!" No answer. Terror clawed at her throat. The promise she'd made felt like chains now, keeping her trapped while Damien could be bleeding out downstairs. Screw the promise. She unlocked the door as quietly as possible and crept into the hallway. The house was trashed, bullet holes everywhere, glass covering the floor like snow, and blood. So much blood. "Damien," she whispered, moving toward the stairs. A hand grabbed her from behind, clamping over her mouth. "Quiet," a voice hissed. Marco's voice. "Don't move." Elena's entire body went rigid. She tried to scream, to fight, but he was too strong. "I'm sorry," Marco said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. "I'm so fucking sorry, but you need to come with me." He started dragging her backward toward the master bedroom. Elena did the only thing she could think of. She bit down hard on his palm. Marco swore and loosened his grip just enough. She drove her elbow into his stomach and broke free, running for the stairs. "Elena, stop!" She didn't stop. She hit the stairs at a dead run, nearly falling on the blood-slick steps. The living room was a war zone. 2 of the security guards were down, furniture destroyed. But in the middle of it all, behind the overturned couch, she found Damien. He was alive, bleeding from a shoulder wound, but alive. "I told you to stay upstairs," he said through gritted teeth. "When do I ever listen?" Heavy footsteps on the stairs behind them. Marco, followed by someone else. 2 someones. Damien pulled her behind the couch with his good arm. "Back door. When I say run, you run. Don't stop for anything." "I'm not leaving. Elena." He grabbed her face, and his hand was sticky with blood. "I need you to trust me. I need you to run." Tears burned her eyes. "Damien, I love you." The words came out fierce, certain. "I should have said it before. I love you, and I need you to survive this. Please." She kissed him, tasting blood and salt and desperation. "I love you too, which is why I'm not going anywhere without you." Before he could argue, she grabbed the gun from his ankle holster. She'd seen it there days ago and stood up. Marco and 2 men she didn't recognize were advancing across the room. They stopped when they saw her. "Put the gun down, Mrs. Corsetti," Marco said. He had his own weapon pointed at her, but his hand was shaking. "You don't want to do this." "You're right," Elena said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "I really don't, but I will. We don't want to hurt you. Just come with us quietly and this ends." "Bullshit." Damien was on his feet now, leaning heavily on the couch but upright. "You kill me, you take her as leverage, and you use her to consolidate power." "We weren't going to kill you," one of the other men said. "Just make you irrelevant, by destroying everything I built, by turning my own people against me." Damien's voice was cold fury. "And you used Marco to do it, made him think he was protecting family when really he was just your puppet." Marco flinched. "Vincent was a good man. You destroyed him over nothing." "He stole from me. He was desperate. His brother was dying, and I would have helped if he'd asked instead of stealing." Damien's expression was hard. "I'm not the monster you've decided I am, Marco, but I'm about to become one if you don't lower that gun." "Can't do that, boss." "Then we have a problem." Everything happened at once. Marco's gun came up. Elena fired without thinking. The shot went wide, but close enough that Marco dove for cover. Damien tackled her to the ground as the other men opened fire. The couch exploded in a cloud of stuffing and splinters. They scrambled toward the back door, staying low. More shots, the smell of gunpowder and blood. Elena's ears were ringing so loud she could barely hear Damien shouting at her to keep moving. They burst through the back door onto the deck. The ocean stretched out below, dark and endless. "Stairs!" Damien gasped, pointing to the side of the deck. "Down to the beach. There's a boat." They ran, or tried to. Damien was limping badly now, leaving a trail of blood on the wood. Elena supported as much of his weight as she could, but he was so much bigger than her. Footsteps pounded behind them, shouting, more gunfire. They made it to the stairs just as Marco appeared on the deck above. "Stop!" he yelled. "Damien, please! This doesn't have to end like this." Damien turned, and Elena saw something flicker across his face. Regret, maybe. Or grief for a friendship that had died somewhere in all this blood. "You're right," Damien called back. "It doesn't. Walk away, Marco. Take whatever payment they promised you and disappear. I'll let you go." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because they have my sister." The words came out broken. "They said if I didn't help them, they'd kill her. I didn't have a choice." Damien's expression changed. "Where is she?" "I don't know. They won't tell me until it's done." "Then it's never going to be done." Damien's voice gentled slightly. "They're going to kill her anyway, Marco. You know that. She's a loose end." Marco's gun hand wavered. "You're lying." "I wish I was. But these people, whoever's really behind this, they don't leave witnesses." Damien took a step forward. "Help me stop them. Tell me who they are, and I'll find your sister. I'll get her out. You have my word." For a heartbeat, Elena thought it might work, thought Marco might lower the gun and choose trust over fear. Then the helicopter appeared over the tree line, spotlight, rotor wash so strong it nearly knocked her over, and through the open side door, mounted machine guns. "Get down!" Damien threw himself over Elena as the world exploded in fire and thunder. The deck disintegrated, wood splintered like matchsticks. Marco didn't even have time to scream before he was gone, just red mist and the echo of bullets. "Move, move, move!" Damien hauled Elena down the stairs as the helicopter circled for another pass. They hit the beach at a dead run, sand sucking at their feet. The boat was there. Small. Fast. The key was in the ignition because Damien always prepared for the worst. Elena jumped in. Damien pushed them off and threw himself aboard as the helicopter opened fire again. Bullets stitched across the beach, kicking up sand and sparks. The engine roared to life. Damien grabbed the wheel with his good hand and opened the throttle all the way. They shot across the water, the helicopter in pursuit, spotlight tracking them, machine gun fire churning the ocean into foam. "Hold on!" Damien shouted over the noise. He cut hard to the left, then right, zigzagging across the water, making them a harder target. Elena clung to the seat and tried not to think about the fact that they were completely exposed, one good shot away from dying. Then Damien did something insane. He turned the boat directly toward the cliffs. "What are you doing?" Elena screamed. "Trust me!" The helicopter was right behind them now, so close she could see the gunner's face. "Damien!" He cut the engine and dropped them into a hard right turn. Momentum carried them sideways, water cascading over the sides. The helicopter, going too fast to adjust, shot past them and slammed into the cliff face. The explosion lit up the night, metal and fire and debris raining down into the ocean. The shockwave hit them a second later, nearly capsizing the boat. Then silence, except for the sound of burning wreckage and Elena's ragged breathing. "You okay?" Damien asked. His voice was weak. Elena looked at him. Really looked. His face was gray, his shirt soaked with blood. "You're not," she said. "I've been better." He tried to smile and failed. "But we made it. We're alive." "Barely." She grabbed his face with shaking hands. "Stay with me, Damien. Don't you dare die after all that." "Wasn't planning on it." His eyes were starting to close. "But maybe just rest for a minute." No, you stay awake. You hear me? You stay awake." Elena grabbed his phone, miraculously still in his pocket, and started dialing. The third security guard, the one who'd been posted furthest from the house. "This is Elena Corsetti. I need immediate medical extraction. Send everything you have." The man on the other end started asking questions, but she cut him off with the coordinates and dropped the phone. Damien's head lolled against her shoulder. His breathing was shallow. "Hey," she shook him gently. "Remember what you said about loving me? I need you to stick around so I can hear it again, preferably when we're not covered in blood and blown up helicopter parts." That got a faint smile. "Deal." "Promise?" Promise. His hand found hers and squeezed weakly. Not going anywhere without you, Elena. She held him as the boat drifted on dark water, dawn breaking across the ocean like a wound. Help arrived 15 minutes later. Medics and more security, and someone who knew how to patch bullet wounds in the middle of nowhere. They stabilized Damien on the beach while Elena stood back, covered in his blood and her own fear, watching them work. He's going to make it, one of the medics told her. Lost a lot of blood, but the bullet went through clean. He's lucky. Lucky. Right. They airlifted him to a private hospital, Elena in the helicopter beside him the whole way. She held his hand and didn't let go, even when the nurses tried to pull her away. Ma'am, we need to treat him. I'm not leaving. Ma'am? She stays. Damien's voice was rough but firm. His eyes opened, finding hers. She stays with me. So they let her stay while they worked, let her hold his hand through the surgery prep and the anesthesia, and the moment his eyes finally closed. The surgeon found her in the waiting room 4 hours later. He's stable, he said, going to be in pain for a while, but he'll recover fully. The relief was so intense, Elena's knees buckled. She caught herself on a chair and just breathed. Alive. He was alive. They let her see him once he was in recovery. He looked smaller somehow, lying in the hospital bed with tubes and monitors and machines tracking every heartbeat. Elena pulled a chair close and took his hand. You're an idiot, she whispered. A complete reckless idiot, and I love you so much it terrifies me. His fingers twitched in hers. I promised I'd run if you told me to, she continued, but I'm really glad I broke that promise, because I can't do this without you. Any of this. The danger, the blood, the constant fear that someone's going to take you away from me. I can't. So you need to wake up and figure out who's really behind this, because I can't lose you now. Silence, except for the steady beep of monitors. Then, so quiet she almost missed it. Not going anywhere? Elena's head snapped up. Damien's eyes were open, hazy with drugs, but focused on her face. Hey, he murmured. Hey, yourself. She was crying now, hot tears she didn't try to hide. You scared me. Sorry. No, you're not. Little bit sorry. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere without you, not anymore. Good. Because I'm not letting you. He smiled, and even drugged and exhausted, it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. We're alive, he said. Yeah, we are. The helicopter? Crashed into a cliff. Everyone on board is dead. Marco? Elena shook her head. Damien's expression crumpled. He was trying to save his sister. I know. I should have seen it, should have known something was wrong. You can't save everyone, Damien. I could have saved him. His voice broke. He was my friend. Elena climbed into the narrow hospital bed beside him, carefully avoiding his injuries. She pressed her face against his neck and held on. I know, she whispered. I'm sorry. They lay like that for a long time, grieving a man who'd betrayed them and died for it, grieving the friendship that had shattered, grieving the fact that in Damien's world, love and loyalty and violence were so tangled up together you couldn't separate them anymore. Eventually, Damien spoke again. Whoever's behind this is still out there. I know. They're going to come at us again. Harder this time. I know that too. I should send you away, somewhere safe, where they can't find you. Elena pulled back to look at him. Try it and I'll shoot you myself. Despite everything, he laughed. Rough and pained, but real. Okay, he said. Okay. We do this together. Together, Elena agreed. And lying there in the hospital room with the sun rising outside and Damien's heartbeat steady against her palm, Elena finally understood what she'd signed up for. Not a marriage of convenience. Not a transaction. A partnership forged in blood and fire and desperate choices. The kind that didn't break, even when the whole world tried to tear it apart. The kind worth fighting for. The safe house was smaller than the ocean property. No glass walls, no dramatic views, just concrete, steel, and enough weapons to hold off a small army. Damien was released from the hospital after 3 days against doctor's orders. He walked out with his arm in a sling and Elena beside him, surrounded by a security detail that had tripled in size. This is excessive, she muttered as they loaded into the armored SUV. This is necessary. Damien winced as he settled into the seat. Until we figure out who's pulling the strings, everyone's a threat. The drive took 2 hours through routes that changed every 10 minutes. By the time they arrived, Elena had lost all sense of direction. Inside, the safe house was functional. Bare walls, basic furniture, a command center set up in what should have been a dining room. 3 men were already there, all armed, all watching her like she might explode. This is Marcus, Gabriel, and Thomas, Damien said, nodding to each in turn. Elena recognized the names from their conversation on the deck. The 3 suspects. And now they were all in the same room, pretending nothing was wrong. Gentlemen, she said carefully. Marcus stepped forward first, tall, broad-shouldered, with gray at his temples and eyes that assessed everything. Mrs. Corsetti, glad you're both safe. Are you? Elena couldn't help asking. His expression didn't flicker. I've worked for your husband for 10 years. If I wanted him dead, he'd be dead. Marcus, Damien said quietly. Just being honest. Marcus looked at Damien. You brought us all here because you don't trust any of us. Might as well acknowledge it. Gabriel shifted uncomfortably. He was smaller than Marcus, softer around the edges, with wire-rimmed glasses and ink stains on his fingers. I understand the precaution. After what happened with Vincent, with Marco, he trailed off. We all understand. Thomas hadn't said anything yet. He stood by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Of the 3, he looked the most dangerous. Scarred knuckles, dead eyes, the kind of stillness that came from violence. Tom, Damien said. Don't. Thomas's voice was rough. Don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. You think one of us sold you out. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're paranoid. Either way, we're locked in here until you decide which. That about sum it up? Damien asked. Pretty much. Elena moved closer to Damien, close enough to feel the tension radiating off him. His shoulder had to be killing him, but he showed nothing. Here's what we know, Damien said, addressing all 3. Someone with intimate knowledge of my operations has been feeding information to an outside party. That information got Marco's cousin involved, got Marco killed, and nearly got Elena and me killed. The leak is either in this room or connected to someone in this room. Or it's someone else entirely, Gabriel said. Someone we haven't considered. I've considered everyone. Damien's voice was flat. It comes back to you 3. You have the access. You have the knowledge. And one of you has a reason I haven't figured out yet. Marcus laughed, sharp and bitter. So we're all guilty until proven innocent. Great system. It's the only system that keeps me alive. Damien. Elena touched his good arm. Can I talk to you? Alone? He looked like he wanted to refuse, but finally nodded. They stepped into the hallway, leaving the 3 men under the watchful eyes of security. You can't do this, Elena said quietly. Do what? Treat them all like enemies. You'll destroy any loyalty they have left. If they're loyal, they'll understand the necessity. And if they're not, you're giving them more reason to betray you. She kept her voice low. Damien, you told me yourself, these are people you've known for years. People who've saved your life. Locking them up like prisoners isn't going to reveal the traitor. It's just going to create more. Then what do you suggest? Test them, separately. Give each one information that only they know and see which piece gets leaked. Elena met his eyes. But do it without turning them into enemies first. You need their cooperation. Damien was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then he exhaled slowly. When did you get so good at this? I've been watching you, learning. She smiled slightly. Someone once told me I was good at reading people. I did say that. His expression softened. Okay, we do it your way, but if this goes wrong, it won't. You can't know that. Neither can you. But I'd rather risk trusting someone than definitely lose everyone. He pulled her close with his good arm and kissed her forehead. You're too good for this world. Your world, my world, he agreed. Which is why I'm probably going to get you killed. Stop being dramatic. You're bad at it. That earned her a real smile. Brief, but genuine. They returned to the command center. The 3 men looked up, clearly expecting the worst. Change of plans, Damien announced. You're not prisoners, you're assets, and I need your help to find out who's trying to destroy everything I've built. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's a different tune. Elena convinced me I was being an ass. Smart woman, Gabriel muttered. Thomas still hadn't moved from the window. What's the play? Damien laid out the plan. Each man would be given a specific piece of false information. Different details about a shipment, a meeting, a financial transfer. They'd monitor which information leaked and trace it back to the source. You're setting a trap, Marcus said, using us as bait. I'm giving you a chance to prove yourselves. And if one of us is the leak? Then we deal with it, quietly. Damien's expression hardened, but I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. The room was silent. Elena could feel the tension, thick enough to choke on. Finally, Thomas spoke. I'm in. Gabriel nodded. Me too. Marcus held Damien's gaze for a long moment. You trust her judgment that much? More than I trust my own right now. Then I guess we're doing this. Marcus extended his hand. But for the record, if I was going to betray you, I'd have done it years ago when it would have actually benefited me. Damien shook his hand. Noted. Over the next 48 hours, they set the trap. Marcus was told about a weapon shipment coming through the northern docks. Gabriel received information about a money transfer to an offshore account. Thomas learned about a meeting with a potential new partner at a specific location. All false, all carefully constructed to seem legitimate, all monitored. Elena watched Damien work, saw him slip back into the role of strategist and leader. But she also saw the cost. He barely slept, refused pain medication that might dull his edge, and moved through the safe house like a ghost. On the second night, she found him in the makeshift office, staring at surveillance feeds and looking like death. You need to rest, she said. I'll rest when this is over. Damien, they killed Marco. His voice was raw. He was trying to save his sister, and they killed him anyway. Used him and threw him away, and I couldn't stop it. Elena closed the door and crossed to him. She took his face in her hands and forced him to look at her. You can't save everyone. You told me that, remember? I should have seen it coming. You're not a mind reader, you're just a man trying to survive in an impossible situation. She kissed him gently. A man who's doing everything he can to protect the people he loves. I'm not doing a very good job. You're alive, I'm alive, that's not nothing. Damien's hands came up to cover hers. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you'd stayed in that bathroom, if you'd listened to me and hidden while they came for me. Then you'd be dead, and I'd be alone. You'd be safe. I'd be broken. Elena pressed her forehead to his. Don't you get it? I didn't fall in love with you so I could watch you die from a distance. I fell in love with you because you're the first person who made me feel like I could be strong enough to stand in the fire. The fire's going to burn you. Then we'll burn together. He kissed her then, desperate and fierce, and Elena tasted fear and love and violence all tangled together. They made love on the office floor with the surveillance feeds flickering overhead, quiet and intense, like they were trying to prove they were still alive. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Damien's heartbeat against her ear, Elena finally let herself feel the terror she'd been holding back. They'd almost died, would probably almost die again, and there was no guarantee they'd keep getting lucky. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. You're not supposed to admit that. Why not? It's true. Damien's arm tightened around her. I'm terrified of losing you, of making the wrong choice, of becoming the kind of monster who can't tell the difference between protecting what I love and destroying it. You won't. You don't know that. I know you. Elena looked up at him. And I know that whatever happens, we face it together. No more pushing me away. No more trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark. We're partners, remember? Partners, Damien agreed softly. Until the end. Hopefully a very distant end. Hopefully. They fell asleep like that, tangled together on the floor, and for a few hours, the world left them alone. The trap sprung on the third day. Thomas's information leaked first. Someone called the meeting location, trying to confirm details. The call was traced to a burner phone registered to a shell company. It's not proof, Gabriel said when they all gathered to review the evidence. Anyone could have made that call. But only Thomas knew about the meeting, Marcus pointed out. Thomas's expression was stone. I didn't tell anyone. I've been in this building the entire time. You have a phone, Damien said quietly, which you've been monitoring. Check the logs. Thomas's hands curled into fists. I didn't do this. Elena studied him carefully. He looked angry, but not defensive, not guilty. Who else did you tell about the meeting? She asked. No one. Think harder. A conversation in passing, a text you deleted, anything. Thomas's jaw worked. There was... My sister called. She's been worried. I told her I was working on something important but didn't give details. Your sister, Damien repeated. Sophia? Yeah, but she... Thomas stopped. Fuck, her boyfriend. What about him? New guy. Only been dating a few months. I didn't like him. Something off about him. Thomas's face went pale. He was asking her questions about my work. I thought he was just curious. What if... Damien was already pulling up information on his computer. What's his name? David Chen. The search took 30 seconds. David Chen's photo appeared on screen, along with a history that made Elena's blood run cold. Former associate of Vincent's, worked in the same division, left the organization around the same time. Son of a bitch, Marcus breathed. He's been using Sophia to get to Thomas. Damien's voice was ice. Getting information piece by piece. Probably has someone on the inside feeding him details about our operations. Where's my sister? Thomas's voice cracked. If he's using her, if he hurts her, we'll find her. Damien looked at Marcus. I need eyes on every property Chen's associated with. Call in every favor. I want his location within the hour. On it. Marcus was already on his phone. Gabriel pulled up financial records. Chen's been moving money. Small amounts, but consistent. All going to the same account. He looked up. The account Marco's sister was supposedly being held at. There was never a sister, Elena said, the pieces clicking together. Or if there was, she was already dead. They used Marco's grief to manipulate him. And now they're using mine. Thomas looked at Damien. Let me come with you. When you find him, please. Tom, she's my sister. My responsibility. I should have seen this coming. Should have protected her. His voice broke. Let me fix this. Damien studied his oldest friend, then nodded. You're with me, but you follow my orders, no matter what. Understood? Understood. The location came through 40 minutes later, a warehouse on the industrial side of town. Security cameras showed 2 vehicles outside and movement inside. They geared up in silence. Damien refused to stay behind despite his injury, and Elena knew better than to argue. You're staying in the vehicle, he told her. Like hell. Elena, we already had this fight. I'm coming with you. Deal with it. Marcus cleared his throat. For what it's worth, boss, I wouldn't waste time arguing. She's already won. Damien glared at him, then at Elena. Fine, but you stay behind me. You don't engage unless absolutely necessary. And if I tell you to run, I probably won't listen, but I appreciate the concern. Despite everything, Gabriel laughed. I like her. Everyone likes her, Damien muttered. It's extremely inconvenient. They took 2 vehicles. Marcus drove the first with Damien and Elena. Thomas and Gabriel followed with additional security. The warehouse district was dead at this hour. Rusted metal and broken windows. The kind of place where bad things happened and no one asked questions. They parked a block away and approached on foot. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady on the gun Damien had insisted she carry. 3 hostiles visible on thermal, Marcus reported quietly. 1 in the main area, 2 in the back room. Sophia? Thomas asked. Heat signature in the back. Could be her. Thomas's jaw clenched. We go in hard. We go in smart, Damien corrected. Secure the perimeter first. Cut their exits. Then we extract Sophia and deal with Chen. They moved like shadows. Marcus and his team circled around back while Damien, Elena, and Thomas approached the main entrance. The door was unlocked. Cocky or stupid, Elena couldn't tell which. Inside, the warehouse was mostly empty. Concrete floors, exposed beams, the smell of rust and abandonment. And in the center, tied to a chair, was a woman Elena assumed was Sophia. Dark hair, Thomas's eyes, tape across her mouth. David Chen stood beside her with a gun pointed at her head. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said calmly. "Right on schedule." Damien stepped forward, his own weapon raised. "Let her go, Chen. This is between you and me." "Is it?" Chen smiled. "I thought this was about Vincent, about justice for a good man you destroyed over nothing. Vincent stole from me. I gave him a chance to come clean. He chose deception. He chose to save his brother's life, and you punished him for it, took everything from him, from us." Chen's voice rose. "We were family, and you threw him away like garbage. So this is revenge. This is justice." Chen pressed the gun harder against Sophia's temple. She whimpered behind the tape. "You took someone I loved. Now I'm going to take someone you love." "She's innocent," Thomas said hoarsely. "She has nothing to do with this. Take me instead." "But that wouldn't hurt Damien enough." Chen's eyes locked on Elena. "Her, though. His wife. The woman he actually cares about. Now that would hurt." Elena felt Damien tense beside her. "You're not touching her," Damien said, voice deadly quiet. "Then shoot me. See if you're fast enough to stop me from killing Sophia first." Chen's smile widened. "Or better yet, drop your weapons. All of you. Or I'll paint the walls with her brain." For a moment, no one moved. Then Elena stepped forward. "Elena, don't," Damien hissed. She ignored him, lowered her weapon, and held up her hands. "You want revenge? Take it." She kept walking toward Chen. "But let Sophia go first. She's not part of this. None of this is her fault." "Elena, stop." Damien's voice cracked. "Please." "I'm his wife," Elena continued, still moving. "The person he cares about most. Isn't that what you said? So take me, use me as leverage, but let her go." Chen's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm stupid? I think you're hurt. I think you loved Vincent, and watching him suffer broke something inside you." Elena was close now. Too close. "I think you've been planning this for months, maybe years, and I think you know that killing innocent people won't bring him back. Shut up." "But maybe making Damien suffer the way Vincent suffered, watching someone he loves be destroyed, maybe that feels like justice." "I said shut up." Chen swung the gun toward her. The room exploded in motion. Damien fired. Thomas lunged for his sister. Marcus and his team burst through the back door. Elena dropped to the floor as bullets flew over her head. She rolled, grabbed her weapon, and came up ready to fire. Chen was down. Damien's shot had taken him in the shoulder. He was screaming, clutching the wound, his gun skittering across the concrete. Thomas had Sophia in his arms, ripping off the tape, checking her for injuries. She was crying, but alive. It was over in seconds. Elena's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the gun. Damien crossed to her, pulled the weapon from her grip, and checked her over with frantic hands. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you? Elena, answer me." "I'm fine." Her voice sounded strange, distant. "I'm okay." "You're not okay. You're in shock." He pulled her against his chest. "What the hell were you thinking? Walking toward a man with a gun?" "I was thinking I could distract him long enough for you to act. You could have died, but I didn't." Elena pulled back to look at him. "We didn't. Everyone's alive." Damien looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he kissed her, hard and desperate and right there in front of everyone. When they finally broke apart, Marcus was smirking. "Told you she was good in a crisis," he said. "Shut up, Marcus." Security was securing Chen, who was still screaming about justice and revenge. Gabriel was on the phone coordinating cleanup. Thomas sat on the floor with his sister, both of them crying. Elena watched it all and felt reality start to settle back in. They'd won, found the traitor, saved Sophia, survived another attempt on their lives. But she could still feel Chen's eyes on her, could still hear him say, "The woman he actually cares about." Damien had broken his own rules for her, had shown vulnerability, shown fear. In his world, that was dangerous. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now?" Damien looked at Chen, then at his people, then back at her. "Now we finish this." Chen was taken to a location Elena didn't ask about. She didn't want to know what happened to him, didn't want to imagine the kind of justice Damien would deliver. Sophia was taken to a hospital, with Thomas refusing to leave her side. Gabriel went with them, already coordinating protection details and safe houses. Marcus stayed with Damien and Elena as they returned to the safe house in silence. "You need to address the organization," Marcus said once they were secure. Word's going to spread about what happened. People will talk. You need to control the narrative. Tomorrow, Damien said. Boss, tomorrow. His voice was final. Right now, I need 12 hours where no one is trying to kill me or mine. Marcus looked at Elena, then back at Damien. Fair enough. I'll handle the immediate concerns. Thank you. After Marcus left, Elena and Damien stood in the empty safe house and didn't speak. Finally, Elena said, He was right about you caring, about me being your weakness. You're not a weakness. In your world, I am. Damien turned to face her. Then maybe it's time to change my world. You can't just, why not? He crossed to her, pulled her close. I've spent my entire adult life building power, building walls, making sure I could never be hurt again. And you know what I learned tonight? What? That I'd burn it all down in a heartbeat if it meant keeping you safe. His voice was rough. Every bit of power, every alliance, every carefully constructed piece of my empire, I'd throw it all away for you. Elena's breath caught. Damien, I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. More than power, more than revenge, more than the need to prove I'm stronger than everyone who tried to break me. He kissed her softly. You're not my weakness, Elena. You're my reason. Tears burned her eyes. That's the most beautiful and terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. Good, because I mean it. He rested his forehead against hers. I know this life is hard. I know it's dangerous. I know I'm asking you to live in constant fear of what might happen next. You're not asking. I'm choosing. I don't deserve that choice. Too bad. You're stuck with me. Elena smiled through the tears. For better or worse, remember? That's what marriage means. Pretty sure our marriage wasn't supposed to mean dodging bullets and helicopter crashes. Yeah, well, we've never been very good at doing things the normal way. Damien laughed, and it sounded like relief. No, we really haven't. They stood there in the empty safe house, holding each other, and for the first time in days, Elena felt like they might actually survive this. Not unscathed, not unchanged, but together. And maybe that was enough. The meeting happened 3 days later in a conference room that smelled like expensive leather and old money. Damien stood at the head of the table with his arms still in a sling and Elena beside him. Marcus, Gabriel, and Thomas flanked them. The rest of the room was filled with men who controlled pieces of the city most people pretended didn't exist. Everyone wanted to know what had happened. Wanted to see if Damien was weak. Wanted to measure whether the king could still hold his throne. Elena could feel the weight of their stares. She wore a black dress that cost more than her father's first month of medical bills and Damien's ring that caught the light like a warning. Gentlemen, Damien began, and the room went silent. I'm sure you've all heard various versions of recent events. Let me give you the accurate one. He laid it out cleanly. Vincent's theft, Marco's manipulation, Chen's revenge plot, the attack on the island, the helicopter, the warehouse. He left nothing out except Elena's role in most of it. The threat has been neutralized, Damien concluded. Chen is no longer a concern. The leak has been identified and eliminated. My organization is secure. And your wife? Someone asked from the back. Elena didn't recognize the voice. She was targeted. That makes her a liability. The temperature in the room dropped. My wife, Damien said softly, dangerously, is not a liability. She's the reason I'm standing here. The reason several of you still have profitable partnerships with me. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, feel free to voice it now. Silence. No? Damien's smile was cold. Good. Because let me be clear about something. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will discover exactly how creative I can be when properly motivated. We understand each other. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Excellent. Damien's expression shifted, became almost pleasant. Now, let's discuss the restructuring. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Elena watched Damien work, saw him rebuild alliances and reestablish dominance with nothing but words and carefully placed threats. By the time it ended, no one in that room doubted who was in control. Afterward, Marcus pulled them aside. That went better than expected, he said. Because he was smart about it, Gabriel added. He'd arrived halfway through, leaving Thomas at the hospital with Sophia, showing Elena as a partner instead of hiding her. That was the right move. It was Elena's move, Damien corrected. I wanted to leave her out of it completely. Which would have made me look like a dirty secret, Elena said. Or worse, a weakness you were trying to hide. Marcus grinned. Told you. Smart woman. You've mentioned that. Damien's hand found the small of Elena's back. Protective. Possessive. Thank you, both of you, for everything. Don't get soft on us, boss, Marcus said, but he smiled. We're not done yet. Still need to shore up the Western Territory and deal with the fallout from Chen's network. Tomorrow. Damien, tomorrow, Marcus. Today, I'm taking my wife home. Except they didn't go back to the penthouse. Instead, Damien had the driver take them to a house Elena had never seen before. Smaller than the penthouse, but somehow warmer. Real wood floors, furniture that looked lived in, windows that showed a garden instead of a city. What is this place? Elena asked as they walked inside. Mine. I bought it years ago. Never told anyone about it. Damien set down his keys and looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. I used to come here when I needed to remember what quiet felt like. It's beautiful. It's yours. If you want it. Elena turned to stare at him. What? The penthouse is mine. My space, my rules, my life. Damien crossed to her, took her hands. But this could be ours. A place that isn't about business or power or keeping up appearances. Just us. Damien, I know I'm doing this backward. I know we got married for all the wrong reasons and fell in love in the worst possible way. His voice was rough. But I want to do this right. I want to give you something real. Elena's throat tightened. This is real. All of it. The good and the terrible. Is it enough? It's everything. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she might break. When they pulled apart, his eyes were wet. Marry me, he said. Elena laughed, confused. We're already married. We signed papers in a courthouse. That's not a marriage, like... Damien pulled something from his pocket. A ring. Not the one she wore now, but something older, simpler. This was my mother's. She gave it to my father when they were young and stupid and broke, before the business, before everything went wrong. The ring was silver with a small sapphire. Nothing like the diamond Elena wore, but infinitely more valuable. He wore it until the day he died, Damien continued. I found it in his desk after, kept it all these years thinking I'd never have a reason to give it to anyone. He held it out. Marry me again. Not for your father's medical bills. Not for business. Just because you want to. Because I love you, and you somehow love me back. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. You're serious? Completely. This is insane. Probably. Is that a yes? Elena took the ring and held it up to the light. It was scratched and worn and absolutely perfect. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Again. As many times as you want. Damien's smile was blindingly bright. He slipped the ring onto her finger beside the diamond, and somehow it looked right. Old and new together. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not running. For staying. For making me believe I could be something other than what I was built to be. Elena pulled him down and kissed him until neither of them could breathe. You were always more than that. You just needed someone to remind you. They spent the night in the small house making love in a bed that wasn't 15 feet wide, in a room that didn't have bulletproof glass, in a space that was finally theirs. And for the first time since Elena signed that contract in Damien's penthouse, she felt like she could breathe. The second wedding happened a week later. No courthouse this time. Just the garden of the small house, with flowers Elena's father helped her pick, and enough security scattered around the perimeter to invade a small country. Her father was out of the hospital now, healthy and whole and suspicious about the entire situation. So this businessman you work for, he said the night before the wedding, he's the one you're marrying? Dad, and he's the reason you suddenly had money for my surgery. The reason you disappeared for weeks. The reason you look like you've aged 5 years in 3 months. His voice was gentle. Elena, sweetheart, I'm old, not stupid. She'd been dreading this conversation, had practiced lies and excuses and half-truths. Instead, sitting in her father's small apartment that Damien had quietly paid for, Elena told him the truth, most of it, anyway. She explained the contract, the marriage of convenience, the way it had stopped being convenient and started being real. She left out the bullets and the helicopters and the men who'd died. Some truths were too heavy to share. When she finished, her father was quiet for a long time. "Are you happy?" he finally asked. "Yes." "Does he treat you well?" "Better than I deserve." "Do you love him?" "So much it scares me." Her father reached across the table and took her hand. "Then that's all I need to know. But Elena, if he ever hurts you, if you ever need to leave, you call me. You hear? I don't care who he is or what he can do. You're my daughter first." "I know, Dad. Thank you." "Although," he added, expression shifting to something sly, "I do appreciate that he made sure I got the best cardiac surgeon on the East Coast and somehow got my insurance to cover everything." "Dad, I told you, not stupid." He smiled. "But he made you happy. He saved my life. So I suppose I can give the man a chance." The ceremony was small. Marcus stood as best man, looking uncomfortable in a suit that wasn't tactical gear. Gabriel and Thomas attended with Sophia, who was recovering but insisted on being there. A handful of other people Elena had met over the past months, people who worked for Damien but somehow felt like family, and a priest who'd been paid enough to not ask questions about why a married couple was getting married again. Elena wore a dress that wasn't a designer label, something simple and white that she'd picked out herself. Her father walked her down the makeshift aisle between rows of folding chairs, and she tried not to cry. Damien stood at the end wearing a suit with no tie and an expression that made her heart stop. Nervous, hopeful, like he still couldn't quite believe she was real. The priest began speaking, but Elena barely heard the words. She was too focused on Damien's face, on the way his hand trembled slightly when he took hers, on the absolute certainty in his eyes. "Do you take this man," the priest was saying, "to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Elena thought about the contract, about the night she'd signed away her freedom to save her father, about every moment since that had brought them here. "I do," she said clearly. "And do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Damien's voice was rough when he answered. "I do, always. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The priest smiled. "You may kiss your bride." Damien pulled her close and kissed her like it was the first time and the last time and every time in between, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The small crowd cheered. Marcus wolf whistled. Elena's father was definitely crying, and when they finally broke apart, Damien whispered against her lips, "Thank you for giving me this. Thank you for asking. I love you, Elena Corsetti." "I love you too, Damien Corsetti." They said it like a vow, like a promise, like the most important truth either of them had ever spoken. The reception was even smaller, just dinner in the garden with wine and laughter, and stories Elena half believed. Marcus told an elaborate tale about Damien accidentally starting a turf war over a misplaced sandwich. Gabriel demonstrated his terrible karaoke skills. Thomas and Sophia danced together, and Elena saw the brother realize his sister was stronger than he'd ever given her credit for. Her father cornered Damien at one point, and Elena watched from across the garden as the two men talked. "Should I be worried?" she asked Marcus. "Nah. Your dad's just giving him the speech. You know, hurt my daughter and I'll kill you, that kind of thing. My father is 62 and recovering from heart surgery." "Yeah, but he's got that dad energy. Damien's probably terrified." Marcus was right. When Damien returned, he looked slightly pale. "What did he say?" Elena asked. "That if I ever make you cry, he knows people." "He does not know people. I'm not taking that chance." Damien pulled her close. "Your father is surprisingly intimidating for a man who can't walk upstairs without getting winded. That's fatherhood for you." They danced as the sun set, moving slowly to music only they could hear. Elena rested her head on Damien's good shoulder and felt his heartbeat against her cheek. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I almost said no. That first night in the penthouse, I almost told you to go to hell and walked out. Why didn't you?" "Because I was desperate and terrified, and I thought I had no other choice." She looked up at him. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about having no choice. It became about choosing you every day, even when it was hard, even when I was angry or scared or wanted to strangle you. Damien's smile was soft. "I choose you too, even when you ignore my orders and walk toward men with guns. Especially then." "Especially then," he agreed. The party wound down as night fell. Guests left in ones and twos until it was just Elena and Damien standing in the garden surrounded by empty chairs and fairy lights. "Come on," Damien said, taking her hand. "There's one more thing." He led her into the house, up the stairs, to a room she hadn't been in before. When he opened the door, she gasped. It was a library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a reading nook by the window, comfortable chairs, and soft lighting. "You said you liked to read," Damien explained, "that you used to spend hours at the library because it was quiet and safe. So I thought, maybe you'd like your own." Elena walked through the room, trailing her fingers along the spines. Poetry and fiction and history and books she'd mentioned in passing months ago that he'd somehow remembered. "Damien, I know I can't give you normal, can't promise you safety or peace or any of the things you probably wanted when you imagined your life." He stayed in the doorway watching her. "But I can give you this. A room of your own. A space that's just yours. Where the world can't touch you." Elena's vision blurred with tears. "It's perfect." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She crossed to him and pulled him into the room. "But you're wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "I don't want a space that's just mine." She kissed him gently. "I want a space that's ours. Everything. The good and the bad and the terrifying. I want to share all of it with you. Even knowing what my life is like, what it will always be like, especially knowing that." Elena held his face in her hands. "I'm not naive, Damien. I know there will be more threats, more danger, more nights where I'm terrified you won't come home. But I also know that I'd rather live one dangerous, beautiful, real day with you than a lifetime of safe loneliness without you." Damien's eyes closed. "You're going to get yourself killed staying with me." "Maybe. Or maybe we'll both live long enough to get old and boring and argue about whose turn it is to take out the trash." "That's a nice thought." "Then let's aim for that." She kissed him again. "Let's aim for ordinary and boring and real, even if we never quite get there." They made love in the library surrounded by books and promises, and Elena thought about how strange life was. How you could start in one place, desperate and scared and signing your life away, and end up somewhere completely different. She'd married a monster to save her father. Somewhere along the way, the monster had become a man, and the transaction had become a love story. The months that followed weren't easy. There were more threats, more late nights where Damien came home bloody and exhausted. More times when Elena had to choose between fear and trust, between running and staying. But there were also mornings where they woke up tangled together in the small house. Dinners where they argued about everything and nothing. Nights where they sat in the library reading, feet touching, content to just exist in the same space. Elena learned how to shoot properly, how to read the tension in a room, how to know when to push Damien and when to let him breathe. Damien learned how to share his burdens, how to ask for help, how to believe that loving someone didn't automatically mean losing them. Her father became a regular visitor, adopting Marcus and Gabriel as surrogate sons and giving Damien endless grief about everything. Thomas and Sophia healed, both physically and emotionally, and slowly rebuilt the trust that had been shattered. The organization stabilized, new alliances formed, old enemies backed off when they realized Damien wasn't alone anymore. And through it all, Elena and Damien built something neither of them had thought possible. A marriage, a partnership, a life. It wasn't perfect. They fought about his hours and her recklessness and whether they could ever safely have children in his world. They had moments where the fear was overwhelming, where the violence felt like too much, where they questioned whether love was enough. But they had each other. And in the end, that was what mattered. 1 year after the second wedding, Elena found Damien playing piano in the middle of the night. He did that sometimes when he couldn't sleep, fingers moving across the keys like he was trying to work out a problem. She sat beside him on the bench and rested her head on his shoulder. "Can't sleep?" she asked. Thinking. About? About how different my life would be if you'd said no that first night. If you'd walked away. His hands stilled on the keys. I'd probably be dead by now, or worse, alone and convinced that was how it had to be. But I didn't say no. No, you didn't. He looked at her, and in the dim light his eyes were soft. You saved me, Elena. In every way a person can be saved. Pretty sure we saved each other. Maybe. He started playing again, something slow and melancholy and beautiful. But you made me believe I could be more than what I was built to be. Made me want to be better, not for power or respect or control, just better. For you. Elena threaded her fingers through his free hand. You know what I learned from all of this? What? That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose damage fits yours. Someone who looks at your scars and sees survival instead of weakness. She squeezed his hand. You looked at me when I had nothing and saw someone worth fighting for, even when I couldn't see it myself. Because you were always worth fighting for. So were you. They sat in the darkness, his music filling the spaces between them, and Elena thought about beginnings and endings and everything in between. She'd entered his world as a transaction, a name on a contract, a desperate woman with no other options. She'd become his wife, his partner, his reason for believing that monsters could change if they wanted it badly enough. And maybe that was the real story. Not the violence or the danger or the dramatic escapes, but the quiet moments like this, where two broken people found a way to be whole together. Where love wasn't about perfect circumstances or fairy tale endings. It was about choice, about waking up every day and deciding that despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the thousand reasons to run, you'd rather stay. Because some people are worth the risk. Some love is worth the fight. And some marriages that begin as contracts become the realest thing either person has ever known. Damien stopped playing and pulled her into his lap. I love you, Mrs. Corsetti. I love you too, Mr. Corsetti. Think we'll make it? To old and boring? Yeah. Elena kissed him, tasting truth and hope and the future they were building one dangerous day at a time. I think we've got a shot. Good. He held her close, heartbeat steady against hers. Because I'm not done with you yet. Good. I'm not done with you either. Outside, the city continued its endless noise. Somewhere, threats were forming and enemies were plotting, and the world kept spinning in all its violent, beautiful chaos. But inside their small house, with its library and its garden, and its rooms full of carefully built trust, Elena and Damien held each other and believed in tomorrow. Not because they were naive, not because they thought love could fix everything, but because they'd learned the most important lesson of all, that strength isn't about never being afraid, it's about being terrified and choosing courage anyway. That power isn't about controlling everything, it's about protecting what matters most. And that love, real, complicated, imperfect love, isn't about finding someone who completes you. It's about finding someone who stands beside you in the fire and says, we'll burn together. Elena had married a monster to save her father's life. She'd stayed because she'd fallen in love with the man beneath the monster. And in the end, she'd discovered that the line between the two was thinner than anyone thought. That monsters were just people who'd survived terrible things. That redemption wasn't about erasing the past, it was about choosing a different future. They would face more danger, more fear, more moments where death felt closer than breathing. But they would face it together, and that made all the difference. The contract that had brought them together was long since forgotten, replaced by something deeper, something real, something that couldn't be written on paper or signed away. A partnership forged in blood and fire and desperate choices. A love that had started as survival and become the truest thing either of them had ever known. And as they sat in his darkness with Damien's arms around her and his heartbeat against her palm, Elena finally understood what she'd been searching for her entire life. Not safety, not certainty, not a life without fear or pain or difficulty. Just this moment, this man, this choice to keep choosing each other every single day, no matter what the world threw at them. That was enough. That was everything. And it was theirs.